an attractive older divorcee.
She's an older woman, she knows what she's doing.
And he was the dashing man who promised her his body and soul.
He bent over backwards for her.
That was until a terrifying encounter inside her apartment exploded in violence.
This was an ambush.
And I just saw blood. I was scared out of my mind.
Leaving one man dead and another on the run.
It is mind-blowing. It's one of those moments where every time you think of it, it's unreal. Like, I can't believe that just happened.
But unraveling this sordid mystery would soon raise an even more alarming question. If push did come to shove, just who'd fire first?
I don't think that anyone could have seen this coming. Nothing of this magnitude.
Wednesday, May 13th, 2009, 7:30 a.m. It's a peaceful morning in a West Jacksonville, Florida apartment building when Ethan McNeil and his wife Jomisha hear a woman's blood-curdling screams pierce the air.
Did you hear that?
It happened so quickly, I don't know if I had a chance to think. She was screaming.
Within seconds, the unmistakable sound of gunfire.
I'm gonna go check that out real quick.
Wait.
I'll be right back.
Ethan cautiously opens his door and peers down the hallway. To his horror, he sees his neighbor, 36-year-old Dorothy Washington, cowering from a man he's never seen before.
And I saw the man, he had two guns, a silver one and a black one, and he was pistol whipping Dorothy.
In the wake of the violence, the McNeils find themselves unsure what to do next.
I know that she needed help, but I was frightened myself, my own safety.
I gotta call the cops.
Ethan and Jomisha decide the best thing to do is call 911. They're not the only ones. A flood of calls from concerned neighbors is already lighting up the dispatch switchboard at police headquarters.
Somebody's getting beat up real bad. It's my neighbor. I think our boyfriend got a gun. You have to be an emergency over there. Somebody need to get out here real quick.
The couple is awaiting the arrival of officers when they hear a sudden pounding on their door.
Wait.
It's Dorothy, with her two young daughters in tow.
Dorothy was right there in my face. You know, she was kind of hysterical.
The kids were very frightened. They were crying.
With blood streaming down her forehead, a terrified Dorothy tells the McNeils that her boyfriend, Michael Brooks, has just been shot and that the attacker has fled the scene. Though they know it could be dangerous, the McNeils decide to investigate.
I noticed that the door was cracked, so I pushed it open a little bit and just called out.
Hey, are you okay?
Hearing no response, the McNeils step inside the apartment and into a scene of unimaginable horror.
I noticed Michael on the floor, shot. He wasn't moving. He had a white t-shirt on, stained with blood, and I just freak out. I started screaming and panicking, and I ran back towards my apartment.
Moments later, the first officers arrive on the scene.
He was shot multiple times in the torso area. He was dead on the scene.
He's 291.
Officers must now begin two very difficult but very different tasks: scouring the apartment for evidence and notifying Michael Brooks, next of kin.
I just couldn't believe it. Actually, I thought it was a dream. He was somebody that was really close to me.
I wanted to figure out what was going on and why was my brother's life taken.
Once on the scene, detectives find themselves grappling with the same question.
Who called it in?
Everybody.
Examining Michael's body, they discover he's the victim of multiple shots from a .45 caliber pistol.
He's got 5 shots in the stomach.
There were .45 caliber shell casings.
Let me know if you find the gun.
Yes, sir, I will.
We did an extensive search, and we never located any weapons.
But what exactly could have sparked this deadly shooting? And who was responsible? To answer those questions, police will need to turn to the crime's terrified eyewitness, Dorothy Washington. and unlock the mysteries of a love affair just 1 year in the making. In July of 2008, 35-year-old Dorothy Washington attended the wedding of a friend at a church in Jacksonville. Invited to be the maid of honor, Dorothy couldn't help but notice one strapping man in attendance.
He was very athletic. Athletic build, he was cut.
Locking eyes with the handsome stranger, Dorothy introduces herself.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Dorothy.
I'm Michael. You are absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Like Dorothy, 28-year-old tile contractor Michael Brooks had grown up in the Jacksonville area. And whether it was the wedding bells in the air or the champagne that was flowing, the pair quickly hit it off.
You want to come over and talk a little privately?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
It was very casual at first. You know, a flirty, touchy-feely type deal.
As they warmed up to each other, Dorothy found Michael's charm and charisma impossible to resist.
You're quick on your feet, too.
Shy a little.
I don't care what mood you were in, but the time you get with him, he'll turn your tears into smiles.
And despite the 7-year age difference, Michael couldn't deny his attraction to Dorothy.
I know that he felt that she was a very attractive woman. She also was independent, having a car, house, kept herself up. He was definitely attracted to that.
Do you mind if I get your number and give you mine?
I think that'll be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
From that night forward, Michael and Dorothy talked on the phone nearly every day. It was clear there was something special between them. But since Dorothy had 2 young daughters to consider, they decided to take things slow.
I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too, baby.
Dorothy was always there, caring mother. She put her kids before, anything.
But tempering their red-hot desire for one another was easier said than done. And beyond Dorothy's children, there was another obstacle preventing her and Michael from letting their passions run wild.
I gotta go, okay? I'm gonna call you tomorrow. All right.
Michael, he was married.
And unfortunately, so was Dorothy. However, neither one of them were exactly in the throes of marital bliss.
Dorothy had been married for a while, cared deeply about her 2 daughters, but it goes sour.
Our brother, he wasn't as happy as he was supposed to be in the marriage.
After months of concealing their feelings for each other, in the late fall of 2008, Michael and Dorothy decided to come clean to their spouses and file for divorce.
Michael adored Dorothy, felt that she was a breath of fresh air, especially dealing with all the problems that he was dealing with in his own marriage.
With their respective spouses no longer an impediment, the couple's relationship soon soared to new emotional and physical heights. In fact, Michael spent many days and nights at Dorothy's new apartment in West Jacksonville. The couple's chemistry clicked outside the bedroom too. Michael was mature beyond his years and happy to take on an adoptive family.
Everyone was accepting to the relationship because he was happy. Actually, I've never seen him that happy before. So as far as how their relationship was going, he loved everything about her.
Today's probably one of your best days, right?
By May 2009, life had never looked better. Not only did Dorothy have a strapping young man to come home to each night, Michael had found a woman as devoted to him as he was to her.
Dorothy and my brother Michael was building a serious relationship. They was getting along on a more advanced level.
Which is why police are so puzzled when they encounter the bloody scene on the morning of May 13th, and has them wondering who'd want to close the chapter on Dorothy and Michael's storybook romance in such a horrifying fashion.
I'm Dorothy.
I'm Michael.
Dorothy Washington and Michael Brooks were embroiled in a sizzling new relationship. But their life together ended one brutal morning in May 2009. When police found Michael gunned down inside Dorothy's West Jacksonville apartment. Dorothy had also been assaulted and was now huddled with her children on the neighbor's couch.
This was a straight ambush. It was stranger than normal cases because we had a living victim.
With the couple's assailant still at large and presumably armed and dangerous, no one would rest easy until he was found.
I was scared out of my mind.
But what triggered this deadly rampage? Finding no signs of forced entry into the apartment, robbery seems like an unlikely motive to police.
The victim was immediately inside the door, which indicates that he opened the door to go out and he was immediately confronted.
There was no forewarning. Once my brother opened the door, he was murdered.
To detectives, the scene at the front door suggests one of two chilling possibilities.
Did this person knock on the door first and then Michael Brooks open the door, or did Michael Brooks open the door and step outside and realize something was up?
Either way, it seems someone has intentionally targeted the couple. But who? While first responders race Dorothy to a local hospital,
can you tell me if they've had any kind of marital problem?
Police turn to Michael's grieving friends and family for answers.
He was having a really tough divorce.
Slowly, a few more details begin to emerge.
He might have been a little jealous against the other guy.
Apparently, Michael's ex-wife Felicia likened their recent separation to salt on an open wound.
Michael's wife, was very emotional.
Is it possible Felicia was so enraged over Michael's budding romance with Dorothy that she did something drastic?
When that one person falls out of love and the other one doesn't, then a lot of times a volatile, situation can come from that.
So volatile that detectives now speculate that the man who attacked Michael and Dorothy may have done so at Felicia's behest.
Anything's possible when love and passion are involved. She could have hired somebody to kill him.
But when police speak to Michael's estranged wife, Felicia, she seems genuinely devastated by the news of his death.
Michael Brooks was shot this morning.
Oh my God. Is he okay? Is he dead?
Sorry, but he is dead. When's the last time you seen Michael?
About 6 months ago when we separated.
Did you have anything to do with his murder?
Absolutely not. I loved him. I still cared about him.
Furthermore, it seems Felicia has already moved on with her life, making jealousy a flimsy motive at best.
Police realized pretty quickly that Michael's wife could not have orchestrated this attack.
But if Felicia isn't behind this attack, then just who is? Fortunately, one victim has survived this bloody episode. After speaking with Felicia, detectives head to the hospital where Dorothy Washington is now being treated for her injuries. Still in shock, Dorothy tearfully recounts the events leading up to the shooting.
Michael had spent the night there, the night of this incident. So when he woke up, he was actually at the apartment.
Michael and I were getting the kids ready for school. He went outside to have a cigarette.
Are you ready, honey?
Uh-huh.
Dorothy claims that almost immediately after Michael stepped outside, she heard a commotion. Before the front door suddenly burst open.
This is any woman's worst nightmare. She sought safety and retreated into her bedroom with the two daughters.
Pushing her daughters into a bathroom closet, Dorothy grabbed her .380 caliber handgun from the bedroom and locked the door.
He kicked the door in. It was Jeffrey.
Dorothy tells investigators that the attacker is none other than her estranged husband, Jeffrey Washington. Wild-eyed with rage, Jeffrey rushed toward Dorothy and snatched the gun away from her.
Dorothy was just as upset and frightened and just terrified. It was just a very scary scene.
Dorothy claims Jeffrey then pressed the gun against her forehead and pulled the trigger.
He tried to shoot her with her own gun, but it malfunctioned.
Dorothy says that once the gun jammed, she tried to make a break for it, but Jeffrey grabbed her and drug her from the apartment, their children hiding in the bathroom closet all the while.
He just kept hitting me and hitting me with both of the guns.
He's got the guns and he's wailing on her.
He hit her in the head again and he pointed his gun at her head.
He tried to shoot me again, and the gun jammed again. I was screaming so loud. The neighbors, they looked out the door.
Dorothy Washington actually put up enough of a fight and made enough noise to where she attracted the attention of the neighbors. And I think that definitely led to his fleeing the scene.
Bloodied and battered, Dorothy claims she darted back inside, grabbed her 2 daughters, and staggered to her neighbor's apartment for help. It's a chilling story, and it sounds like Dorothy is lucky to be alive. Police issue an APB for Dorothy's estranged husband, Jeffrey Washington.
We put his face on the news as much as we could, as well as we contacted his family members, told them that we were looking for him.
Dorothy gives police the make and model of Jeffrey's car, as well as his home address. But for all their efforts, Jeffrey is nowhere to be found.
We got in touch with his girlfriend and searched her house just to make sure that he wasn't in there. He wasn't.
Police begin to fear an armed Jeffrey has fled the area. But then they receive a phone call from a concerned resident.
A school board employee called the police and said, "I don't know what just happened, but some guy just bailed out of a car behind a school that was being built."
Officers race to the scene and find the abandoned car, which is registered to Jeffrey Washington. But there's no sign of him anywhere. No one has any idea where Jeffrey is headed next, or what he might do.
This is a scary situation. This man allegedly killed his wife's lover and tried to kill her in front of their children. If that's true, then he's capable of anything.
But as detectives broaden their search for Jeffrey, they'll soon uncover a witness that contradicts everything Dorothy Washington had to say about the shooting, and leaves those closest to the case wondering, who really was the intended victim of this savage attack? After a pair of failed marriages, Dorothy Washington and Michael Brooks formed a union that symbolized a second chance at true love. But their heart-stopping relationship came to a grisly end when Michael was shot dead inside Dorothy's apartment.
Just seeing him just laying there still, this is just crazy.
According to Dorothy, her estranged husband, 44-year-old Jeffrey Washington, had been responsible for the unprovoked attack.
Dorothy Washington actually stated that Jeffrey Washington definitely was the bad guy in this story.
Police find Jeffrey's abandoned car parked along a roadway near an area school. A school board member claims he saw a man get out of the vehicle and race into the nearby woods.
We utilized an air unit, as well as I called in the U.S. Marshal Task Force and bloodhounds. And the dogs did pick up scents and they started to track, but they did lose the scent when they got into the heavily wooded areas.
Investigators head into the thick woods on foot, well aware he's armed and possibly dangerous. But after hours of combing the area, they reach a dead end.
We searched all day long until about 8 or 9 o'clock that night.
While the manhunt continues into the following day, detectives try and flesh out the presumed motive behind the crime: jealousy. But interviews with Jeffrey's friends and family don't exactly paint a picture of a scorned lover capable of murder. Rather, Jeffrey is described as a deeply religious man who serves his community and is devoted to his children.
From all reports, he just seemed like he was a good guy, a man of faith, someone who was doing good work in the community that people had respect for.
A gifted cement finisher, Jeffrey even donated his services pro bono to help restore a historic Jacksonville cemetery.
He was a model of what a man should be.
No one can imagine Jeffrey killing anyone, much less pointing a gun at the mother of his own children.
Well, considering what we know of Mr. Washington, it seems out of character. It's almost unbelievable.
To investigators, Jeffrey's reputation as a gentle soul doesn't jive with the horrific crime he's allegedly committed. Then on May 15th, just 2 days after Michael's death, an unarmed Jeffrey Washington walks into the headquarters of the Jacksonville Police Department.
He turned himself in with his pastor and his cousin.
Jeffrey appears to be in a great deal of pain. To their surprise, police soon find out why.
We took him into custody. We brought him into the interview room to do the interview. And we realized at that point that he was actually shot. Jeffrey Washington's injury was actually a gunshot wound that went in on his side and actually went out the back.
While police are eager to get Jeffrey's version of events, it's obvious he isn't fit for a formal interview.
He knew he had been shot, and he was worried about bleeding to death. Because he was injured, I couldn't proceed with an interview without having him checked out by medical personnel. So we called rescue.
Paramedics transport Jeffrey to an area hospital. Fortunately for him, the bullet hasn't pierced any vital organs. After being cleared by medical personnel, Jeffrey's finally able to tell police his side of the story.
What is it you want to know?
How's your relationship now with Dorothy?
Jeffrey Washington and Dorothy Washington had been married for about 13 years.
There was still joint custody of the kids in terms of Mr. Washington would be able to have contact over the weekends.
Jeffrey tells police that at first, their custody arrangement worked out fine. But in the weeks leading up to the shooting, Jeffrey noticed his children acting differently.
Every time they come to me, they seem upset. Ever since you've been with this dude, Michael.
Baby, what's the problem? Daddy's here for you. What's going on?
According to Jeffrey, just days before the shooting, his 8-year-old daughter, Amy, begged her father to let her stay with him.
You don't look yourself. Why you not ready to go back to your mom's house?
I just don't want to go.
There's this outsider, an intruder, a stranger who's doing the job that you feel you should be doing or could do better. And then on top of that, he's not even making them happy.
What's happening over there at the apartment? Please tell me.
Nothing.
In Jeffrey's head, you know, my daughter is hurt, is crying. This guy has to be doing something. Let me go over there and see what's going on.
Jeffrey states that in an effort to uncover the truth, he drove to Dorothy's apartment on the morning of May 13th. Jeffrey is adamant that he just went there to talk. But the moment he arrived, the situation started to escalate.
I just want to see my daughter, man.
Man, what you doing here, man?
I just need
Look, you know you're not even supposed to be over here, all right?
Jeffrey stated that Michael was aggressive against him.
Don't you
Just
got a
for a few
restraining order?
minutes.
I don't care nothing about that.
All I need to do is see my daughter.
We start tussling.
According to Jeffrey, during the struggle, Michael fell backwards through the door of the apartment. At which point, Jeffrey claims Dorothy came after him with a gun. After that, everything was a blur. Multiple shots were fired. But all Jeffrey knows is that somewhere during the struggle, he was shot in the stomach.
He's bleeding, and just kind of a very surreal scene playing over and over, like, was that a dream?
Jeffrey tells investigators he eventually wrestled the gun away from Dorothy before striking her in self-defense.
He claimed he was over there not really to do harm, but that it escalated. It kind of got out of control, and so he was forced to defend himself.
Dazed, confused, and mortally wounded, Jeffrey then fled the scene.
I got in my car, went down the street. I jumped out the car in panic, ran in the woods.
Your heartbeat is racing, your mind is going in probably 100,000 different directions because I'm shot. Where do I go? Do I turn myself in? Do I keep hiding? Do I tell anybody?
As I was in the woods, I was continuing to bleed. So I just came and just turned myself in the police station.
He realized that he was shot because the adrenaline started to come down, and he knew we were looking for him. Things kept adding up to where he felt like I needed to go turn myself in or I need to seek help.
For police, Jeffrey's side of the story raises a number of troubling possibilities. Could Michael Brooks have indeed been the instigator? Or worse, could he and Dorothy have conspired to lure Jeffrey to her apartment in order to eliminate him from their lives once and for all?
There's always more than one side to any story, and this story definitely had two sides.
But soon, new information will surface revealing a much darker side to this twisted tale, and will call into question everything detectives think they know about Jeffrey and Dorothy Washington. Dorothy Washington and Michael Brooks seemed to have it all. But their whirlwind romance came to a startling end when Michael was shot dead in Dorothy's apartment. To those close to him, Michael's death seems like a senseless tragedy.
I would think that my brother would pass away from some type of disease, old age, you know, something like that, but to be murdered like that.
Based on Dorothy's emotional version of events, her estranged husband, Jeffrey Washington, looks like a stone-cold killer. But when a gut-shot Jeffrey tells a different story, detectives begin to wonder if he could have been the intended victim in a far more twisted plot.
It doesn't appear that Dorothy cared for Jeffrey anymore. He could have gotten in the way of her getting custody of her kids. It is possible that they planned to harm him that day.
Hoping to unravel this mystery, police turn to Michael Brooks' family for answers. Still stunned by his sudden death, they find it difficult to believe that someone like Michael could have instigated this bloody encounter.
Michael, he was a great man. He was very understanding and very cool person to be around.
He was very social, very humorous, cracked jokes all the time.
But given Jeffrey's story, police can't help but wonder if there was a side to Michael friends and family had never seen. They start asking some tough questions about his relationship with Dorothy and her daughters.
Any signs of physical abuse, especially with the two girls?
No, I mean, I can't imagine Dorothy would have her kids around anybody like that.
He's not an abusive person at all.
I believe that if they did not like him or if they had an issue with him, Dorothy wouldn't even have Michael stand with him.
Michael, man, he's real likable, you know, never raised his voice to anyone.
He was just your average great guy.
A background check on Michael seems to support friends and family's contention.
Michael had no criminal history. There was no record of prior violence.
Given Michael's squeaky clean record, police figure a background search on Dorothy isn't likely to be any more revealing. And while Dorothy's criminal record is indeed squeaky clean, investigators come across information that stops them dead in their tracks.
She had bought a gun, I believe, months earlier.
Records indicate Dorothy purchased a .380 semi-automatic pistol from a local pawn shop 1 month earlier. The same type of weapon investigators believe was used to shoot Jeffrey.
Jeffrey's gunshot wound was consistent with a .38 caliber weapon. Generally, people buy handguns for one of two reasons: to protect themselves or intended harm against someone else.
Either way, detectives decide it's time to bring Dorothy Washington in for another round of questioning, where they press her about the recent gun purchase.
Ma'am, did you purchase a gun?
Yes, I did.
But why?
Because I was afraid.
Afraid of who?
My crazy-ass ex-husband.
The evidence did indicate Mr. Washington had abused Miss Washington in the past. As a result, she had taken steps to get an injunction to keep him away from her.
I even got a restraining order and moved away just to get away from him.
She does everything she can in order to stay away from him, including moving to a place where she thinks he doesn't know where she lives.
She was afraid of him.
Pulling the couple's court records, investigators discovered Dorothy's story checks out. Still, they're curious about one crucial detail Dorothy left out of her initial statement. Just when and why did she shoot her estranged husband?
If you could just please tell us again what happened that day.
Like I said, I heard shots. I grabbed my babies and ran. Grabbed my gun and we hid in the bathroom. That's it.
Moments later, Dorothy said Jeffrey burst through the bathroom door looking for blood.
She was hiding the two kids and holding her gun when she heard the bathroom door shatter open. She stepped out of the closet and pointed the gun at him and said no, and he yelled yes, and so she shot him.
Dorothy's statement seems to be corroborated when police conduct a thorough re-examination of the crime scene.
Her door was kicked in as well as her bathroom door was broken in, which lended credence to her story that the suspect actually came towards her and attacked her after he had shot and killed Michael Brooks.
It seems the pendulum has again swung back from Jeffrey being a potential victim to being the instigator of the attack. But did Jeffrey truly intend to murder his ex-wife and her lover that day? Pulling surveillance footage from Dorothy's apartment complex, detectives make a startling discovery.
We have him on video at the apartment complex walking around 5 or 6 hours before the incident ever occurred.
To investigators, Jeffrey appears to be casing his estranged wife's apartment.
You see on the video him just kind of walking around
At 7 a.m., the video shows Jeffrey entering the apartment building with his hands in his pockets. And while the video doesn't show Jeffrey wielding a gun prior to entering Dorothy's apartment, it does when he emerges from the building minutes later.
We actually have him on video running with the gun in his hand towards his car. He got into his car and he drove about 1.5 miles from the scene.
The surveillance footage, the court order, the forensic evidence, it all leads authorities to one conclusion.
It does look like it's premeditated. I kind of went over there to confront this person.
Prosecutors charged Jeffrey Washington with first-degree murder, attempted murder, armed burglary, and aggravated battery domestic violence. News of the arrest has Michael Brooks' family breathing a sigh of relief.
I was very confident that Jeffrey was going to get what he deserved. I mean, he turned himself in, and, you know, all of the evidence was there.
But as the case heads to trial, it seems that confidence may be a bit premature. A new eyewitness is about to come forward with shocking information. Information that will explain once and for all what really happened inside Dorothy's apartment.
She stated that she observed the shooting of Michael Brooks.
It's August 2010, and Jacksonville resident Jeffrey Washington is on trial for his life. He's accused of shooting his estranged wife's lover, Michael Brooks, and bludgeoning Dorothy outside her apartment. A horrific event that unfolded before their 2 daughters' very eyes.
It was very traumatizing to the kids. You have the 2 most important people in their lives, damn near killing each other.
But with a gunshot wound of his own, Jeffrey's supporters contend he'd acted in self-defense. However, in opening arguments, prosecutors paint a much different picture. They assert Jeffrey had a history of physical violence, and when his wife finally left him for a younger man, he snapped.
Most men that abuse women got to have the control. You're my woman, therefore I have the right to do what I want with you.
They allege that on the morning of May 13th, Jeffrey's rage finally boiled over. Obtaining a .45 caliber handgun, he drove to Dorothy's apartment to put an end to her romance with Michael Brooks once and for all.
Jeffrey felt territorial, that another man is in the house with his ex-wife.
The defendant still wanted a relationship with Miss Washington. Our theory was that Michael Brooks had stepped outside and Jeffrey Washington confronted Michael Brooks, and that's when he shot him.
Hearing the gunshots, a terrified Dorothy took action to protect her children.
Dorothy Washington, being scared, grabbed her 2 daughters. She was trying to hide.
But after pumping 4 more bullets into Michael Brooks, Jeffrey went searching for his estranged wife.
Feeling that she was going to get hit and that he was going to do something to her, she shot him in self-defense.
Wounded and bleeding, Jeffrey wrestled the gun out of Dorothy's hands, pointed it at her, and squeezed the trigger. Miraculously, the gun jammed.
If the gun had not jammed, there would be 2 victims.
Jeffrey Washington, even though he had been shot, was able to grab the gun from Miss Washington and then started hitting her with the gun. She then ran out of the bedroom and ran outside seeking help in the hallway.
Jeffrey's attack on Dorothy continued in the breezeway until he spotted eyewitness Ethan McNeil and fled the scene. As for Jeffrey's motive, prosecutors assert the case boiled down to just one thing: jealousy.
He went there to do harm because he was jealous. And even though Dorothy Washington had taken every step she could to keep herself safe, he was still able to find her.
To back up their claims, prosecutors point to the previous restraining orders, the security footage of Jeffrey taken outside of Dorothy's apartment, and the fact that he abandoned his vehicle shortly after he fled the scene.
His actions showed you that he was someone who knew that he had done something horribly wrong.
To further support their theory about the crime, the prosecution calls Dorothy Washington to the stand, where she tearfully recounts the abuse she endured at the hands of her estranged husband.
He was an abuser, plain and simple. Once you do it once, you do it again and do it again.
Dorothy also details the horrifying moment when Jeffrey's abuse reached its zenith, and how in that split second she feared for her life and for the lives of her daughters.
Dorothy Washington was trying to protect herself and her children.
But contrary to Dorothy's claims, defense attorneys argued the shooting was self-defense. They assert Jeffrey had simply driven over to the building out of concern for his children's welfare.
Hey, I just want to see my daughter, man.
When confronted by an aggressive Michael Brooks, they said, Jeffrey had no choice but to defend himself.
We don't know what was in play in Jeffrey's head. That could have just been, okay, my daughter is hurt, is crying. This guy has to be doing something.
To bolster their argument that Jeffrey was no cold-blooded killer, defense attorneys called not one, but 12 character witnesses.
Jeffrey Washington had character witnesses, or people who spoke highly of him, said that he was not that bad a person, that this was kind of like an isolated incident.
The jury seems impressed. Seizing on their momentum, the defense decides to go for broke, calling Jeffrey to the stand to testify on his own behalf.
Jeffrey Washington had to testify in this case because all the evidence indicated that he was there. The only thing he could argue really is that this was self-defense, and that's what he did.
According to Jeffrey, his 2 daughters were his world, and he would do anything to protect them.
Jeffrey Washington was stating in the trial that he was trying to protect his children from Michael Brooks. He was alleging that Michael Brooks was abusing the children and that the children were telling him these kind of things.
Jeffrey also testifies that it was Michael Brooks who instigated the physical altercation that led to the shooting.
He testified it was in self-defense, that he really didn't go in there to do harm, but that it kind of got out of control. And so he was forced to defend himself.
Many in the courtroom find Jeffrey's testimony convincing. But under cross-examination, prosecutors assert Michael's injuries don't square with Jeffrey's self-defense claims.
Self-defense is not 5 times. Self-defense is 1 shot, I'm trying to get the heck out of here. 5 times, that's premeditation.
Jeffrey doesn't deny he pulled the trigger, but claims that he was so frightened and that everything happened so fast, he had no idea he shot Michael so many times.
Something's fishy about that. There's no way in the world you're not gonna remember shooting somebody 5 times and pistol whipping your ex-wife.
In a bold yet risky move, prosecutors decide to play their trump card. They called Jeffrey's now 10-year-old daughter, Amy, to the stand to testify.
You can't describe the feelings that's going on this tries to turn on that little girl's heart right now. So what am I supposed to do? Do I tell my dad that I love so much, or do I protect my dad?
The answer soon becomes clear. Amy claims her dad gunned down Michael completely unprovoked. No yelling, no altercation, just cold-blooded murder.
This kid had the courage to come into court and testify, knowing that she is fingering the person who's sitting in that courtroom, her father.
In their closing arguments, prosecutors assert that this is a clear-cut case of premeditated murder, while Jeffrey's defense team argues that Jeffrey is a good man who was pushed to the breaking point by a combative young man who he believed was abusing his children. But as the jury breaks to decide Jeffrey Washington's fate, nobody knows which way the scales of justice will tip. Will the jury throw the book at him, or have sympathy on a man who would do anything to protect his children? In Jacksonville, Florida, 45-year-old Jeffrey Washington is facing a life-or-death trial. He's charged with murdering 29-year-old Michael Brooks and then repeatedly pistol-whipping his estranged wife, Dorothy. It's unclear which way the jury will rule, but after only 2 hours of deliberations, they announce they've reached a verdict. They find Jeffrey Washington guilty on all counts.
This was all planned out. He claimed self-defense, and fortunately the jury saw through that.
The prosecution insists that the brutal nature of the crime deserves the most severe punishment possible.
It was cold, calculated, and premeditated. He shot him 5 times. He then went on and tried to do harm and did do harm by beating his wife. So that makes it really not just one victim, but two victims. So that's why we thought the death penalty would be the appropriate penalty in this case.
But rather than the death penalty, the judge gives him a life sentence with no possibility for parole.
I believe that Jeffrey got what he deserved.
To kill a man's spirit, to kill a man's dreams, I don't care how many characteristics and witnesses you have. The fact is you killed somebody.
Jeffrey has to answer by him taking my brother's life. That's something he have to deal with.
In the wake of the verdict, Dorothy Washington has tried to rebuild her life. But nothing can change the fact that the young man who captured her heart was gunned down in cold blood by the father of her children, a man she once loved. A man driven by jealousy to commit the most heinous of crimes.
As far as Dorothy and Michael, it was pretty much a green light. Jeffrey and Dorothy's side of the triangle was pretty much a red light.
He was his mother's only child, and he had a lot of family that loved him. And for you to just selfishly take someone else's life just because of your jealousy.
The dogs were there, pacing. A plastic pet gate was mysteriously knocked over at the bottom of the stairs, a silent indicator that something sudden and perhaps violent had occurred. And upstairs in the bathtub was Laura. She was gone, naked, unresponsive, with unnatural foam at her mouth. The back door, which she obsessively locked every single night to keep her demons out, was found completely unlocked. When a detective finally went to notify David, he was already sobbing uncontrollably before the police even told him she was dead. I tell you, guilt is a very heavy coat. And some people start sweating bullets before the heat is even turned on. But David was not the only man standing in the shadows of this tragedy. Laura, in her vulnerable state, was trying to move on and was seeing several other men searching for human connection she had been denied for decades. One of them, a personal trainer named Will, admitted to being at her house the very night before she was found. He left, deleted all her text messages because he had a girlfriend he was hiding things from, and walked away into the night. The police barely pushed him for an airtight alibi. They barely pushed anyone. The entire investigation was a shameful masterclass in apathy. And then we get to the autopsy, a procedure that demands the utmost scientific rigor. It was conducted by a medical examiner named Mark Shelley, a man whose professional past is so absurd it sounds like cheap fiction. This is a doctor who, in a previous military job, actually took a deceased Marine's brain home to show to his children. You have to be kidding me. This is the man entrusted to find the scientific truth for Laura. Sweetman. He noted fresh contusions on her head, her back, and her arms. He noted foam in her airways, which is a classic physiological sign of drowning. Yet he casually ruled the cause of death as undetermined. He claimed she had a history of a minor heart attack 2 years prior. Yet he found absolutely no physical scarring or evidence of heart damage during the actual physical autopsy. The toxicology report came back clean, but it only tested for the most basic street substances, completely ignoring whatever specific prescription medications Laura might have been taking under the crushing weight of her daily terror. And the laboratory director signing off on the severely limited report was a man with a prior criminal conviction for stealing a firearm from a police evidence room. I tell you, a traveling circus has better operational standards than this county medical office. The local police took this incredibly flawed, undetermined ruling and simply washed their hands of the whole affair. They folded their notebooks and walked away. They did not deeply investigate the lover, who was there the night she died. They did not relentlessly interrogate the husband with a documented history of emotional abuse, a secret double life, a suspicious lack of an alibi, and a massive financial motive to see her gone so he could inherit full custody and avoid a costly divorce settlement. 7 years later, when David's own business partner was brutally executed with a bullet to the back of the head, the police still did not bother to look back at the mysterious death of Laura. Murder is a complex puzzle, but you absolutely cannot solve the puzzle if you stubbornly refuse to even open the box and look at the pieces. Laura Sweetman was a brilliant, compassionate, and deeply loving woman who spent her final months constantly looking over her shoulder, knowing the darkness was slowly closing in on her. Her life was tragically taken, and her justice was stolen by an incompetent system that simply could not be bothered to care about a frightened woman. But the truth does not just die in a bathtub, and it does not permanently disappear inside a dusty cardboard file. It waits patiently for someone willing to stand up and look. And looking closely at the cold, hard facts of this investigation, the absolute silence of the authorities is the loudest confession of all. Human beings are the most peculiar creatures on the face of this earth because they will snuff out a bright and shining life for the most absurd and pathetic reasons you could ever possibly imagine. I tell you, after decades of looking into the dead eyes of killers, nothing surprises me, but the audacity of some people still makes my blood run cold. It was the summer of 1969 in Racine County, Wisconsin, a Wednesday afternoon, in July to be exact, when a 10-year-old boy was fishing near an old condemned bridge on 8 Mile Road and stumbled upon a nightmare. The boy saw a foot near the muddy bank of the Root River, and what investigators eventually uncovered scattered in the mud, wrapped in discarded Milwaukee Sentinel newspapers and torn brown bags, was the shattered remains of a teenage girl. My. The cruelty required to reduce a human being to pieces is something most people cannot comprehend. But I know exactly what it means. It means the killer had patience, absolute control, and the luxury of time and privacy. This was not a crime of sudden blind panic. No, this was deliberate and methodical, like a surgeon with a rotting soul. The victim was Stephanie Casper, a sweet, hard-working girl who was just one day shy of her 18th birthday, a girl who had her whole life ahead of her, waitressing at a local diner in Milwaukee called Mark's Big Boy, trying to earn her way to independence. Stephanie was a good kid, the kind who looked out for the younger ones in her neighborhood, but she carried the innocent burden of a secret romance with a young black serviceman named John. It was the 1960s. Times were tense, and she hid her love from her family out of fear of their judgment, a tragic but completely normal teenage instinct that forced her to be secretive about her whereabouts. She vanished into the darkness after finishing her shift at 12:30 in the morning on Sunday, July 6th, stepping out the door with her brown leather purse slung over her shoulder, and stepping right off the face of the earth. When her father Charles finally reported her missing, his worst fears were validated by a radio broadcast describing a body with a distinct mole on the right side of the face. You have to be kidding me, I thought, as I reviewed how the investigation spiraled in a dozen directions at once. The police chased ghosts and shadows, dealing with a trail of discarded belongings, her gold purse, her Social Security card, and photographs dumped along a rural road in Franklin, miles away from the river, painting a picture of a predator shedding evidence as he drove. They looked at everyone, including the grieving father, simply because the rumor mill is a vicious and idle machine that loves to chew up broken families. They asked Charles if he killed his own daughter over her secret relationship, and the poor man nervously chuckled and said if he had, they never would have found her. It was a foolish thing to say to a cop, but grief makes people say stupid things. And he was quickly cleared. The attention rightly shifted to the diner, a chaotic environment full of late nights, heavy drinking, and unsavory characters who tracked the schedules of naive young waitresses. There was a manager who gave off a foul stench of guilt, offering unsolicited details about psychics and killers with his exact initials. And then there was a 20-year-old cook named Michael Bartelt. Michael told police he saw Stephanie leave out the back door, not the front, and then immediately asked if he could leave for a pre-planned vacation to Hawaii because he had quit his job days prior. Liars, I tell you, they always over-explain. They build these elaborate sandcastles of deception, hoping you will not notice the tide coming in. The detectives let him go, a mistake born of the era, because they lacked the technology and the foresight to see through a charade. 19 years passed with Stephanie waiting in the cold ground for justice. her file gathering dust until 1988, when Michael's own sister called the police. She pointed the finger right at her brother, claiming he never went to Hawaii but instead vanished for a year, and that he was a predator who had abused his own family members. When investigators finally tracked Michael down, his story shifted, as lies always do over time. He subtly claimed he clocked out at 10:30 that night and never saw Stephanie leave, putting distance between himself and the crime. But the most damning detail, buried deep in the old paper files, was his time card. The time card proved Michael was not even on the clock that night. He had inserted himself into the narrative, a classic psychological maneuver by a killer trying to control the investigation from the inside. They waited for DNA technology to catch up, hoping to match his profile to hairs found near a second dump site miles away from the river, a sun-kissed box holding more of the poor girl's remains. But justice is a slow and agonizing train, and Michael died of sepsis in 2024 before they could truly hold his feet to the fire. And here's a twist that proves murder is a tricky business. His DNA did not match the hairs. A non-match does not make him an innocent man, but it means the physical evidence cannot lock the cell door. They looked at another monster too, a man named Wilbert Mackey, whose own daughter claimed he forced her to throw heavy bags into the river. A man who bragged about being the Root River Killer. He was a demon in human skin who terrorized his children, but his DNA did not match either, leaving investigators to wonder if he was just a cruel phantom stealing the credit for another man's evil work. The psychology of a killer is a dark and twisted labyrinth. Some kill for power, some for twisted pleasure, and others simply because they believe they are gods who hold the power of life and death over the vulnerable. Stephanie Casper was vulnerable that night, perhaps angry that her boyfriend fell asleep and missed their ride, perhaps desperate enough to accept a ride from a stranger, or perhaps lured by someone she vaguely recognized. The current investigators are now looking at a new ghost, a military man tied to another dismembered girl in Idaho in 1981, a man whose dark shadow stretches across the Midwest. The detective on this case today is relentless, moving heaven and earth, fighting through the bureaucratic nightmare to run down every single lead. Because that is what we do. We do not forget. We do not let the passage of over 50 years erase the memory of a young girl who just wanted to grow up, who loved her family, who made sure everyone felt included, and who met a monster in the dark. The killer might think he got away with it. He might think the mud of the Root River washed away his sins. But the truth is a patient hunter, and we will keep hunting until the very last breath leaves our bodies, because nobody, absolutely nobody, gets a free pass for taking a life. Human beings are strange creatures. They lie, they cheat, and they destroy the people they are supposed to protect for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine. When a person vanishes into thin air, the truth does not disappear with them. It lingers in the shadows, waiting for someone to turn on the light. This is the story of Melissa Casillas, a woman who seemingly walked off the face of the earth in Taos, New Mexico, on the 26th of June, 2025. Melissa was a hard-working mother, an administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and a tough survivor of thyroid cancer. She was the absolute anchor for her 18-year-old daughter, Sierra, who had already survived a tragic and devastating car accident. A devoted mother like that does not just evaporate. But on that Thursday, everything Melissa knew was mysteriously wiped clean. Let's look closely at the timeline. It is early, 6:15 in the morning. Melissa drops her husband Mark at work. Mark is a superintendent, a seasoned hunter, a man who thinks very highly of himself. By 7:45 in the morning, Sierra wakes up to find her mother back at home. Melissa claims she forgot her security badge, but here is the first logical fracture. Mark watched her hand that exact badge to security earlier. Why lie to your own child? Because Melissa is hiding something, or she is intensely terrified of someone. At 8:02 in the morning, her old cell phone is wiped clean, A factory reset. You have to be kidding me. People do not wake up on a random Thursday and erase their entire digital footprint for absolute fun. They do it because they are desperately trying to hide a trail, or because a controlling force is making them do it. The strange day moves on. Just before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa drops off lunch for Sierra at the coffee shop. Security cameras catch her driving erratically, hitting a parking block hard enough to visually shake the vehicle. That is a textbook behavior of a person operating under immense psychological stress. She walks purposefully, hands over a sandwich, cashes a check, and leaves. At 1:33 in the afternoon, she texts Sierra, telling Mark to find his own ride home. 5 minutes later, at 1:38, her new phone is factory reset. Her digital cloud backup is completely scrubbed with extreme prejudice. That takes deep technical intention. That takes a level of digital erasure that screams of a highly calculated plan. By 3:30 in the afternoon, Sierra returns home to find a ghost town. The family cars are there. The highly protective dogs are there. Her mother is totally gone. Missing are a toothbrush, reading glasses, sunglasses, and a 90-day supply of vital thyroid medication. This looks exactly like a staged departure. Mark arrives home, and this is where the dark psychology of a guilty conscience, or at least a deeply manipulative mind, takes center stage. A normal husband panics. A normal husband tears the entire town apart, looking for his missing bride. Mark looks at unfamiliar tire tracks in the driveway and instantly dismisses them. When a family friend named Lloyd calls in a critical tip, saying he saw Melissa walking along Highway 518, looking disoriented near an old blue truck, Mark explicitly tells the police to ignore it. He aggressively claimed she was not wearing a white sweater and did not have a limp. My, your wife is missing, and you are playing casual fashion police instead of rushing to the scene to check if she is bleeding to death on the side of the road. I tell you, an innocent man chases every single ghost. A man with dark secrets controls the narrative. That very first night, Mark sits down with the family of Melissa, the Mondragons. Does he offer comfort? No. He immediately begins a thorough and vicious character assassination. He tells them Melissa ruined their finances, had lawsuits, and failed miserably at her professional job. They were drowning in debt, their wages were being garnished, and their high-level security clearances had been completely suspended. Financial ruin is one of the oldest motives in the dark history of homicide. It breeds deep desperation, and desperation always breeds extreme violence. Mark wants everyone to blindly believe Melissa simply buckled under the immense pressure and selfishly walked away into the desert. He even floats the absurd idea that she left on purpose so he could declare her legally dead and collect life insurance, a policy that did not even exist anymore. He is throwing desperate theories at the wall to see what sticks to the paint. But physical evidence does not ever lie. Investigators find hunting boots belonging to Mark near a fish tank in the master bedroom. They have fresh mud on them. Mark claims he has not worn them in ages and points to a non-existent spiderweb as proof. Right next to those boots is a dry drop of human blood. When confronted by detectives, Mark gets deeply agitated and asks for a lawyer. Now, Mark has an alibi. He was physically at work. But an alibi only proves where your physical body was, not what your dark mind orchestrated behind the scenes. The police in the specific jurisdiction, well, they leave a lot to be desired. They foolishly let Mark dictate the early search parameters. They completely dismiss a massive tip about a man named Rick Valerio, a local man with a blue truck who was drunkenly rambling on horseback about finding a decapitated body in the mountains. The lead investigator casually talks to him for 5 minutes over a metal gate and decides a man is just seeking public attention. That is not a real investigation. That is a casual neighborhood chat. You dig until you hit solid rock bottom, but they lazily stopped at the green surface grass. Then comes the video. A few days later, Mark magically finds security footage from a random house on Highway 518 showing Melissa walking briskly at 2:18 in the afternoon. She has a backpack. Her hair is tied back. She does not look distressed. Mark aggressively uses this as absolute definitive proof that she left on her own 2 feet. But I do not buy the simple runaway wife theory for a single second. The deep psychology of the specific victim simply does not fit the convenient narrative. She was fiercely and undeniably devoted to Sierra. She was actively planning to move to Albuquerque to financially support her daughter through beauty. School. A woman with that intense level of maternal dedication does not just vanish into the mountain wind without a single goodbye note, leaving her only child to the merciless wolves. She wiped those personal phones for a specific, terrifying reason. Maybe she discovered something massive and unforgivable about Mark. Or maybe she was reluctantly entangled in the dark web of those national laboratory secrets people constantly whisper about. But my gut instinct confidently tells me the true answer lies much closer to home. It lies in the extreme control Mark exerted, the painfully separate finances, the emotional abuse quietly whispered, a shadow in the morning. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, the peaceful atmosphere of Arlington was shattered. At exactly 7:29 in the morning, emergency dispatchers received a frantic call from Chow Tran. His voice trembled with anxiety as he requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. He explained to the dispatcher that his father-in-law, Long Nguyen, who was 70-something years old, and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, were not answering their door. Chow, along with his wife and teenage son, had gone to the apartment, only to find the windows open and an eerie silence hanging over the home. An experienced officer, Officer Weller, was quickly dispatched to the apartment complex. When he arrived, he noticed the entire family standing outside on the pavement, their faces pale with worry. It was far too early in the morning for a typical welfare check, and the sheer number of family members gathered outside immediately signaled that something was deeply amiss. Officer Weller approached the front door and knocked, calling out into the quiet apartment. Receiving no response, he carefully stepped inside. The interior of the apartment was in complete disarray. Drawers were pulled out, compact discs were scattered across the floor, and furniture was overturned, presenting all the classic hallmarks of a burglary. Officer Weller searched the living room, the kitchen, and the bathroom, finding no one. Finally, he approached the bedroom. At first glance, the room appeared empty. He turned to leave, but as his flashlight swept across the wall, he stopped. Next to a small closet door, there were faint hand smudges on the drywall. A sudden, instinctual hesitation gripped him. Every seasoned instinct told him that opening that door would change everything, yet his duty compelled him forward. He reached out, turned the handle, and pulled the closet door open. Inside, the small closet lay Long and Hong. They had been bound with a massive amount of duct tape, their heads and mouths completely wrapped. It was immediately clear that they had passed away. Officer Weller, despite his 14 years of experience, was left momentarily speechless by the gravity of the scene. He stepped back into the living room, took a deep breath, and called for backup, requesting homicide investigators and the crime scene unit. When the veteran homicide detectives, including Detective Stewart, arrived, they were deeply shaken by the severity of the crime. Detective Stewart, a veteran with 21 years in the homicide division, noted that this was one of the most tragic scenes he had ever encountered. The physical evidence suggested a struggle had begun right at the front entrance, with traces of a physical altercation marking the carpet, the couch, and the walls. At first, the scene looked like a robbery gone wrong. To reinforce this theory, the perpetrators had left behind highly specific items: a plate of crushed prescription pills on the coffee table, a marijuana cigarette, and a light blue bandana wrapped tightly around a beer bottle. To the investigators, the blue bandana looked almost like a gang signature. Arlington had several active youth gangs at the time, and the color of the bandana pointed directly toward them. Yet, to an experienced detective, the scene felt almost too perfect, as if it had been deliberately staged to lead the police down a false path. The search for answers. The autopsy conducted at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office revealed a devastating truth. While the victims had suffered blunt force trauma to their heads, likely from a heavy object like a hammer or a bat, that was not the cause of their passing. Instead, they had suffocated due to the extreme amount of duct tape wrapped around their faces. The examiner noted that Hong's face had been bound with 25 feet of tape, while Long's face had been wrapped in 10 feet of tape. The sheer malice required to commit such an act pointed to something far more personal than a random robbery. As the detectives began interviewing the family, Chow Tran acted as a primary spokesperson due to his strong command of English. He told Detective Stewart that the entire family had been celebrating Long's birthday the previous evening. They had played cards and enjoyed each other's company until 10 o'clock at night, after which another family member had driven the elderly couple home. Chow claimed that his in-laws did not keep much money in the house and had no known enemies in the community. They were simply sweet, hard-working grandparents who kept to themselves. The investigation took a sudden turn when Detective Stewart received a phone call from an insurance company. The representative informed him that the deceased couple held a substantial life insurance policy worth $1 million. When the detective inquired about the beneficiaries, he was surprised to learn that Chow Tran himself was named on the policy. Detectives immediately brought Chow in for further questioning. Chow explained that the insurance policy was established to ensure that the commercial sewing business could survive and continue supporting the family if anything were to happen to the elders. He cooperated fully, providing a seamless timeline of his whereabouts on the night of the tragedy. Every family member present at the birthday party backed up his alibi, leaving the police with no legal grounds to suspect him. The forensics team processed the staged items from the apartment, extracting a clear DNA profile from the discarded marijuana cigarette. They compared the DNA against Chow, the other family members, and a national database known as the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS. To their profound disappointment, the results returned no matches, because the database only contains the profiles of convicted felons. The investigators hypothesized that the suspect might be a juvenile or someone who had never been arrested before. With no fresh leads, no fingerprint matches, and dozens of interviews yielding no new suspects, the momentum of the investigation began to slow. The months stretched into years, and the case eventually grew cold. For over 2 years, the file sat on a shelf, waiting for a single piece of the puzzle to fall into place. The lost thread found. The breakthrough came in the autumn of 2015, over 3 years after tragedy. In a seemingly unrelated incident in Houston, a young man was arrested for a felony offense, stealing a horse. In the state of Texas, livestock theft is treated with great severity, and the arrest required the young man, named Willie Guillory, to submit his DNA to the state database. When Willie's DNA profile was uploaded into CODIS, the system instantly flagged a perfect match. His genetic profile matched the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette left at the crime scene in Arlington back in 2012. At the time of the offense, Willie had been only 16 years old, which explained why his profile had not been in the system during the initial investigation. On October 17, 2015, Arlington police officers apprehended Willie on a parole violation in the interrogation room. When confronted with the undeniable scientific evidence placing him inside the apartment, the young man broke down. He wept openly and confessed to his involvement, but he insisted that he was not the mastermind. He had merely been a follower. Willie revealed that in June of 2012, his 49-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory, had convinced him to take a road trip from Houston to Arlington. Bobby had obtained a key to the apartment and instructed Willie to help him stage a robbery. Together, they had scattered items, left the blue bandana, the beer bottle, and the crushed pills to make it look like local gang members were responsible. Willie admitted that he had smoked a marijuana cigarette and left it behind, entirely unaware that he was leaving the key to his own undoing. When Long and Hong returned home that evening, the situation turned violent. Willie claimed that Bobby attacked the couple to subdue them, and then instructed Willie to help carry them into the bedroom closet. It was there that Bobby bound them with duct tape. When asked why they would target a harmless elderly couple, Willie delivered a stunning revelation. He explained that the entire crime was a murder-for-hire plot orchestrated by a woman named Daphne. Right, a spiritual advisor in Houston who was close friends with his uncle Bobby. Willie recalled overhearing Daphne telling Bobby that the couple owed her a massive amount of money, and that she wanted them gone if they failed to pay. The mastermind unveiled. Armed with his critical confession, detectives arrested Bobby Guillory on December 16th, 2015. Bobby, who had no prior criminal record, initially remained silent, but when presented with the evidence and his nephew's statement, he chose to confess. He explained that he had been in a desperate financial situation in 2011, having lost his job and facing homelessness. Daphne had exploited his financial vulnerability, offering him $10,000 to carry out the deed. Bobby painted a vivid picture of Daphne Wright as a commanding, manipulative figure who operated like a spiritual loan shark. She had convinced Chow Tran and Hong Lu that their business failures were a result of a powerful curse that only she could lift. As they fell deeper into debt trying to pay for her rituals, Daphne learned of the substantial life insurance policies. She realized that the only way to recoup her money was to ensure the policy was paid out, which required the passing of the policyholders. According to Bobby, Daphne had provided with the key to the apartment. When the detectives asked Bobby where Daphne had gotten the key, his answer shook them to the core. She had gotten it directly from Chow Tran. Detectives immediately moved to arrest Daphne right at her home in Houston. During a thorough search of her residence, investigators discovered a detailed ledger. The book contained meticulous records of her clients, detailing charges of $10,000, $20,000, and even $40,000 for various spiritual services, including the placement and removal of curses. It was a highly lucrative operation built entirely on the fear and desperation of vulnerable families. To build an airtight case against Daphne, the prosecution made a strategic decision. They offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, truthful testimony. Chow agreed to cooperate, explaining to the court that his family had been utterly terrified of Daphne's supposed spiritual powers, believing that she could ruin their lives with a curse if they did not pay their debts. Chow claimed that his mother-in-law had even suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay Daphne off, a claim that detectives viewed with great skepticism, but which highlighted the intense psychological control Daphne held over the family. In August of 2019, the trial of Daphne Wright began. Chow took the stand, testifying in detail about Daphne's greed, her threats, and how he had left the apartment key under a doormat for her associates to find. Despite the defense's attempt to portray Chow as the sole conspirator who wanted the insurance payout for himself, the jury was thoroughly convinced of Daphne's central role as the mastermind. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charge of capital murder. Daphne Wright was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring she would never again prey on the fears of others. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the tragedy, though the detectives felt a lingering sadness that Chow Tran did not face legal consequences due to his immunity agreement. They found comfort in the knowledge that the truth had been brought fully into the light. The memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu was honored through the pursuit of justice, leaving the community with a powerful reminder that honesty, compassion, and truth will always triumph over greed and darkness. The sun always seemed to rise with a particular kind of promise over Arlington, Texas. In the early years of the new millennium, the city was hummed by a quiet, industrious energy. Among the thousands who had come to build a life in this vibrant corner of Tarrant County were Long, Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They had arrived in the year 2000, carrying with them little more than their treasured family traditions, a deep respect for their heritage, and an unwavering belief in the American dream. For Long and Hong, the journey from Vietnam had been a long, winding road, like many who had arrived in previous generations, especially during the first great wave after the historic events of 1975. They found comfort and familiarity in the close-knit local, Vietnamese community. Arlington had become a sanctuary where the old world and the new world met. Here, supermarkets smelled of fresh star anise and lemongrass, while the streets outside echoed with a familiar hum of American commerce. Determined to create a lasting legacy for their 3 children and grandchildren, Long and Hong established a commercial sewing business. It was a modest operation at first, filled with the steady, rhythmic click-clack of sewing machines and the colorful cascades of cotton, silk, and polyester. To help manage the growing enterprise, they enlisted their son-in-law, Chow Tran, a 38-year-old who spoke fluent English and possessed a natural knack for business, communication. Chow quickly became the public face of the company, negotiating contracts, welcoming clients, and handling the daily operational details. For nearly a decade, their hard work yielded beautiful results. The family business flourished, culminating in a highly prestigious contract to manufacture garments for a global entertainment giant, none other than Disney itself. In those golden years, the family felt an immense sense of pride. They had woven their own success, thread by thread, proving that dedication and unity could conquer any obstacle. Chapter 2, The Shadow of the Curse. But fortune, as the old proverbs often warn, can be as fleeting as the morning mist. By the year 2011, the winds of luck had shifted. The lucrative contract with Disney was lost, and almost overnight, the steady hum of the sewing machines began to falter. Bills started piling up, and the once vibrant workshop grew worryingly quiet. In moments of deep financial stress, people often reach back to the oldest roots of their culture for comfort and answers. For generations, traditional beliefs held that a sudden run of bad luck was not merely a matter of bad economics, but a spiritual misalignment. Long and Hong, like many of their peers, believe in the presence of protective spirits and the delicate balance of cosmic energy. When a family faced bankruptcy, divorce, or severe hardship, it was customary to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor, someone capable of performing ancient rituals to banish negativity and welcome prosperity back into the home. Anxious to save the family legacy, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law began searching through the local Vietnamese language newspapers. Amidst the classified ads, one particular listing caught their eye. A spiritual advisor based in Houston, some 250 miles away, advertised her unique ability to lift powerful curses and restore good fortune. Her name was Daphne Wright. Hopeful and desperate for a turning point, Chow made the long drive down to Houston to consult with Daphne. At her home, she performed an elaborate ritual designed to cleanse the family's business of its perceived spiritual obstacles. Chow returned to Arlington filled with a renewed sense of optimism. He assured the family that their luck was bound to change, and that the dark clouds hanging over their business would soon part. Yet as the months rolled by, the financial distress only deepened. Instead of finding relief, the family found themselves trapped in a different kind of web, one woven from mounting debts, whispered promises, and an escalating spiritual dependency that would ultimately pave the way for a devastating tragedy. Chapter 3, A Morning in June. On the morning of June 10, 2012, the peace of a quiet Arlington neighborhood was shattered. At exactly 7:29 in the morning, an emergency dispatcher received a frantic call from Chow Tran. He was requesting a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long and Hong. Chow explained to the operator that his son and wife had gone to the apartment to check on the couple, only to find the residence quiet and a window suspiciously open. Fearing the worst, the family gathered outside, too terrified to step across the threshold themselves. An experienced patrol officer, Officer Weller, was quickly dispatched to the scene. Even for a seasoned veteran with 14 years of service, the atmosphere outside the apartment felt unusually tense. Welfare checks rarely occurred so early in the day, and the sight of an entire family waiting anxiously on the pavement suggested that this was no ordinary misunderstanding. Upon entering the apartment, Officer Weller immediately noticed signs of disturbance. The living room was in disarray, with compact discs scattered across the floor and furniture moved out of place, pointing toward a possible burglary. Officer Weller called out, his voice echoing through the quiet rooms, but there was no reply. The kitchen and bathroom were empty. With a growing sense of unease, the officer approached the master bedroom. At first glance, the room appeared empty, but as Weller turned to leave, his flashlight caught a series of dark hand smudges on the wall adjacent to a small closet. Taking a deep breath, he opened the closet door. Inside, hidden away in the darkness, lay the tragic remains of Long and Hong. They had been bound tightly with duct tape, their faces covered, and their lives cruelly cut short. The sheer brutality of the scene left the responding officers in absolute shock. It was a tragedy that defied comprehension. Why would anyone commit such an unspeakable act against a peaceful, elderly couple who had spent their lives working hard and helping others? Chapter 4. The Stage Puzzle. The Arlington Police Department's Homicide Unit, led by investigators with over 20 years of experience, immediately took control of the crime scene. At first, the evidence seemed to point directly toward a violent robbery committed by a local street gang. A light blue bandana, a common symbol among certain active youth gangs in the area, was found wrapped neatly around a beer bottle. Nearby, a plate of crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette lay on the coffee table, almost as if the intruders had paused to celebrate their crime. However, seasoned detectives quickly grew skeptical. In their experience, real gang burglaries were rarely so neatly decorated with symbolic items. The crime scene felt too deliberate, almost as if it had been meticulously staged to tell a specific story. Sometimes, a perfect crime scene is a sign that someone is trying too hard to point us in the wrong direction, one investigator noted. The sheer amount of duct tape used on the victims suggested a deeply personal motive, rather than a random burglary gone wrong. As the forensic teams collected hair fibers, DNA swabs, and fingerprint samples from the tape and the discarded cigarette, the investigation turned toward the family's inner circle. Detective Stewart began by interviewing Chow Tran, who acted as the primary spokesperson for the grieving family. Chow explained that the night before the tragedy, the entire family had gathered to celebrate Long's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed a wonderful evening, staying until 10:30 before receiving a ride back to their apartment. When asked about potential enemies or financial assets kept at home, Chow maintained that his in-laws had no known enemies and possessed very little wealth. He painted a picture of a sweet, generous couple who were beloved by their neighbors and deeply dedicated to their community. Yet, a routine inquiry with the family's insurance company soon revealed a startling detail: a life insurance policy worth at least $1 million, with Chow Tran listed among the primary beneficiaries. Chapter 5. The Long Cold Road. Despite the discovery of the substantial insurance policy, detectives lacked the concrete evidence needed to make an arrest. Chow and the rest of the family provided consistent, cooperative statements, and their alibis the night of the murders were thoroughly verified. When the DNA results from the crime scene finally returned from the laboratory, they brought a wave of disappointment. The genetic profiles extracted from the marijuana cigarette and other items did not match Chow, any other family members, or any existing entries in the federal DNA database known as CODIS. Investigators theorized that the perpetrator might have been a minor at the time, meaning their profile would not yet be registered in the adult system. For more than 2 long years, the case remained at a complete standstill. The files were carefully stored, the leads went cold, and the family attempted to rebuild their shattered lives in the shadow of an unresolved grief. The community whispered, wondering if justice would ever find its way to Arlington. But justice, though sometimes slow, possesses a quiet persistence. In the autumn of 2015, a seemingly unrelated event hundreds of miles away in Houston set off a chain reaction that would finally blow the case wide open. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony involving the theft of a horse. Because he had reached adulthood and was convicted of felony, his DNA profile was officially entered into the Cody's database. Within days, the system flagged a perfect match. Willie's DNA was an identical match to the genetic material left on the discarded marijuana cigarette in Sidelong and Hong's apartment 3 years earlier. Chapter 6, Unraveling the Web. In October of 2015, detectives brought the 19-year-old Willie Guillory into the interrogation room. When confronted with the undeniable scientific evidence placing him at the scene of the crime when he was just 16, the young man broke down in tears. He confessed his involvement, but insisted he was merely a pawn in a much larger, darker game. Willie revealed that he had traveled to Arlington under the instruction of his uncle, Bobby Guillory, a 52-year-old man who was struggling desperately with unemployment and poverty. Bobby had been offered $10,000 to carry out the crime by none other than Daphne Wright, the Houston-based spiritual advisor whom Chow and Hong had contacted years prior. According to the confessions, Daphne had transformed from a spiritual guide into a relentless creditor. Over the years, she had run up an astronomical bill for her services, claiming that the family owed her between $250,000 and $280,000, knowing that the family could not pay. Daphne had allegedly focused her attention on their lucrative life insurance policies as the ultimate way to settle the debt. The revelation shook the investigators to their core. What had initially been investigated as a random act of street violence was, in truth, a highly coordinated, cold-blooded conspiracy born of greed and manipulation. Chapter 7, The Scales of Justice. On December 16, 2015, officers arrested Bobby Guillory at his home in Katy, Texas. Facing the overwhelming weight of his nephew's confession and his own financial desperation, Bobby admitted to his role in the tragedy, confirming that Daphne Wright was indeed the mastermind who had coordinated the entire plan. The investigation soon culminated in a dramatic trial in August of 2019. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, including Daphne's personal ledgers, which detailed the exorbitant fees she charged her clients for spiritual interventions. Chow Tran, having been granted immunity in exchange for his full cooperation, took the stand as the state's key witness. He described Daphne as an incredibly manipulative and controlling figure who held immense psychological sway over their family. While the defense argued that Chow was far more complicit in the scheme than he claimed, the jury ultimately focused on the primary instigator of the conspiracy. In September of 2019, Daphne Wright was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced severe legal consequences for their actions. Though the legal proceedings brought a sense of closure, the tragedy left a permanent scar on the community. It served as a somber, powerful reminder of the dangers of extreme greed, the vulnerability of those facing financial hardship, and the absolute necessity of looking out for one another. Ultimately, the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu survived not through the tragedy of their passing, but through the enduring love of their children and grandchildren, who continue to honor their legacy of hard work, kindness, and cultural pride in their adopted home of Arlington. The morning sun over Arlington, Texas, usually brought with it a sense of quiet promise. In the early warmth of June, The tree-lined streets of suburban neighborhoods began to stir with the gentle sounds of sprinklers, distant lawnmowers, and the soft chatter of families starting their day. Among the vibrant communities that had made this city their home, the Vietnamese immigrant community stood out as a testament to resilience, hope, and enduring pursuit of the American dream. For Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu, that dream had been a long, winding journey that began across the ocean. Decades earlier, after the historic events of 1975 and the fall of Saigon, families like theirs had packed what few belongings they could carry, bearing an immeasurable wealth of hope, tradition, and determination. They settled in Arlington during the 80s and 90s, drawn by the warmth of the climate and the promising opportunities for business. It was a place where they could raise their children, cherish their cultural heritage, and build a lasting legacy. Long and Hong were the very definition of a gentle, hard-working couple. In their 70s, they had achieved what many only hoped for: a close-knit family, 3 loving children, and a commercial sewing business that they had built from the ground up. To support their endeavors, they had welcomed their son-in-law, Chow Tran, into the heart of the business. Chow, a 38-year-old who spoke fluent English, became the public face of their enterprise, managing contracts, speaking with clients, and navigating the complexities of the American corporate landscape. For nearly a decade, their efforts bore sweet fruit. They secured lucrative contracts with major commercial giants, including major entertainment brands like Disney. The sewing machines hummed with prosperous energy, and the family felt a deep sense of gratitude. They were prominent, highly respected, and deeply loved by neighbors who knew them as a sweet, generous couple who never bothered anyone. The gathering shadow. However, even the brightest paths can encounter unexpected turns. By the year 2011, the gentle winds of good fortune began to shift. The lucrative contract with Disney was lost, and the steady stream of business began to slow to a worrisome trickle. In times of hardship, the human heart often looks backward to ancient wisdom, searching for comfort and answers in the spiritual traditions of the homeland. For generations, their culture cherished beliefs in the luck deity and the wealth protection deity, symbols of hope that promise security and harmony if honored with a sincere heart. When major challenges arose, families would occasionally seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor, a bridge between the material world and the unseen forces of destiny, hoping to lift the heavy cloud of bad luck that seemed to hover over their sewing shop. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law Hong began searching through the local Vietnamese newspapers. Far across the state, some 250 miles away in the bustling city of Houston, they found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright. She claimed a unique gift: the ability to dissolve negative influences, lift ancient curses, and welcome prosperity back into the lives of those who had lost their way. Urged by a deep desire to protect their family legacy, Chow reached out to Daphne. The journey to Houston was filled with a quiet hope. In her home, Daphne performed intricate rituals designed to turn their fortunes around. For a time, Chow and Hong felt a renewed sense of optimism, believing that their dedication would soon be rewarded and that the sewing machines would hum merrily once more. Yet, as the months stretched into 2012, the promised prosperity did not arrive. Instead, the financial burden grew heavier, and the relationship with their spiritual advisor took on a silent, demanding weight. An unforeseen call. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, at exactly 7:29 in the morning, the peaceful routine of the Arlington Emergency Dispatch Center was interrupted by a worried voice. Chow Tran was calling to request a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. Chow explained to the operator that his teenage son had gone to knock on the door of the apartment, but there had been no response. The family had gathered outside the residence, their worry growing with every passing minute. They noticed that a window to the apartment was slightly open, and a troubling feeling began to settle over them. Too anxious to enter the home themselves, they waited on the sidewalk, praying for a simple misunderstanding. Officer Weller, a dedicated member of the Arlington Police Department with 14 years of experience, was the first to arrive on the scene. Seeing the entire family standing outside the apartment so early in the morning immediately signaled to him that this was no ordinary welfare check. Stepping to the front door, Officer Weller called out into the quiet apartment. There was no answer. The living room, kitchen, and bathroom were completely still, yet the home showed unmistakable signs of disarray, suggesting a burglary had taken place. Weller walked toward the bedroom, his focus entirely on finding the elderly couple and ensuring they were safe. As he turned to leave the bedroom, his flashlight caught hand smudges on the wall next to a small closet door. A sudden hesitation stopped him in his tracks. Following a quiet professional instinct, he reached out and opened the closet door. Inside, the tragic reality unfolded. The gentle elderly couple, Long and Hong, were found tied together. The scene was incredibly somber and quiet, marking a heartbreaking end to their beautiful journey. Officer Weller, deeply moved by the sight, stepped back into the living room and immediately radioed for a supervisor and the crime scene unit. The search for truth. When the Arlington homicide investigators arrived, led by veteran detectives with over 21 years of experience, they found themselves facing a profound mystery. The apartment showed signs of a violent struggle that had begun right at the front door. There were markings on the walls and furniture, and a curious assortment of items left behind on the coffee table. Among the scattered belongings was a plate of crushed prescription pills and a handmade cigarette, alongside a light blue bandana wrapped around a beer bottle. To the initial observer, these items looked like the calling cards of local youth gangs that occasionally operated in the area. However, Detective Stewart, a seasoned investigator with a sharp eye for detail, remained skeptical. The crime scene felt almost too deliberately arranged, as if someone had gone to great lengths to paint a picture of a robbery gone wrong. The subsequent autopsy at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office revealed a deeply moving tale. The cause of passing was not the physical struggle itself, but suffocation caused by the heavy layers of tape wrapped around their faces. The sheer effort and pain involved in their final moments filled the investigators with profound determination to bring justice to this gentle couple. As the team began interviewing neighbors and community members, they received a call from an insurance company. It revealed that the couple carried a substantial life insurance policy worth at least $1 million, with their son-in-law, Chow Tran, named as a beneficiary. A cold trail and a warm light. Detectives invited Chow to the station to discuss the family's financial affairs and the insurance policy. Chow cooperated fully, explaining that the policy was designed to protect and sustain the commercial sewing business in the event of an untimely tragedy. He provided an airtight alibi for the night of June 9th, explaining that the entire family had been celebrating his father-in-law's birthday at a lively gathering that lasted until 10 o'clock in the evening. Over the next 2 years, investigators worked tirelessly, interviewing 50 to 60 family members, neighbors, and business associates. They collected DNA samples from the handmade cigarette found at the scene, hoping to find a match in the national database. But the results returned empty and with no new leads. The file was carefully placed among the cold cases, though it was never forgotten. The breakthrough arrived unexpectedly in October of 2015. A young man named Willie Guillory, who was 16 years old at the time of the tragedy, was arrested on an unrelated felony charge of taking a horse without permission in Houston. Because he had transitioned into adulthood and was now facing a felony, his DNA profile was entered into the national database. Within days, a notification lit up computers at the Arlington Police Department. A perfect match for the DNA on the cigarette left in Long and Hong's apartment. Unraveling the tapestry, detectives traveled to question Willie Guillory, who quickly became overwhelmed with emotion and confessed. He explained that he had not acted alone. He had been guided by his uncle, Bobby Guillory, a 52-year-old man who fell on hard times after being laid off from his job. Bobby, desperate to make ends meet, had been approached by the spiritual advisor, Daphne Wright. Daphne, whom Bobby described as a powerful and demanding figure, claimed that a client owed her a massive debt of between $250,000 and $280,000 for her spiritual services. In a startling turn, Bobby revealed that the key to the apartment had been provided directly by someone close to the family, allowing him to enter and stage the scene to look like a random gang intrusion. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, investigators uncovered the deep psychological hold that Daphne held over her clients. She kept meticulous ledgers charging tens of thousands of dollars for rituals to bring prosperity or ward off misfortune. Chow Tran, when confronted with the growing evidence, explained through his legal representation that the pressure of the debt and the fear of spiritual repercussions had driven the family to extreme despair. He claimed that the family had felt entirely trapped, leading to a tragic decision in the hope of resolving the overwhelming financial burden. The triumph of justice. In August of 2019, the trial of Daphne Wright began. The courtroom was filled with members of the local community, seeking closure for the gentle couple who had brought so much warmth to Arlington. Chow Tran took the stand as a key witness, describing how the promise of prosperity had slowly turned into a web of control, though the defense argued that Chow himself held significant responsibility. The jury focused on the orchestrating force behind the tragedy. After careful deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty for capital murder. Daphne Wright was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she could no longer weave webs of deception. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced the legal consequences of their actions, bringing a long-awaited peace to the family's memory. Though the journey to justice had been long and filled with sorrow, the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu remained a gentle light in the hearts of those who loved them. Their story became a poignant reminder of the value of family, the importance of seeking true and honest paths, and the enduring strength of a community united in the pursuit of truth. The morning sun always rose with a brilliant, blazing promise over flat, wide horizons of Arlington, Texas, painting the sky in soft shades of peach and gold. It was a city that hummed with a quiet, industrious energy, a place where people from all corners of the world came to build something lasting. Among those who had traveled thousands of miles across oceans to find their sanctuary were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They were a gentle, deeply devoted couple who carried the rich, ancient traditions of their Vietnamese homeland in their hearts while embracing the endless possibilities of the American dream. In the year 2000, they had packed their modest belongings, gathered their family, and stepped off a plane into the warm Texas air. For decades, Arlington had been a welcoming beacon for Vietnamese families, a movement that had begun in the late 70s after the fall of Saigon and continued through the 80s and 90s. It was a community built on mutual support, hard work, and the shared joy of seeing children and grandchildren thrive in a new land. Long and Hong, alongside their 3 children, felt an immediate connection to this bustling, diverse haven. They were determined to establish a legacy, and they did so by founding a commercial sewing business. Because their son-in-law, Chow Tran, possessed the most fluent command of the English language, he naturally became the public face of the enterprise. Chow was a young man of 38 years, ambitious and eager to please, handling the complex negotiations with contractors and managing the daily business relations. For nearly a decade, their efforts bore magnificent fruit. The gentle hum of sewing machines was the rhythm of their daily life, a sweet song of productivity that eventually earned them highly coveted contract with major commercial giants, including the legendary Disney Corporation. They felt blessed, secure, and incredibly proud. However, even the most beautifully woven dreams can experience frayed edges. By the year 2011, the tide of good fortune began to recede. The lucrative contract with the entertainment giant was lost, and the steady stream of orders dwindled to a stressful trickle. As the business began to slip into a worrying decline, the family turned to the spiritual traditions that had anchored their ancestors for thousands of years. In times of profound uncertainty, bankruptcy, or emotional distress, it was customary to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor to restore harmony, invite the blessings of the money protection deities, and lift any lingering shadows of bad luck. Searching through the pages of a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow and his mother-in-law, Hong, discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in the sprawling city of Houston. The woman advertised an extraordinary ability to banish malevolent curses, perform ancient rituals of protection, and usher in a renewed era of prosperity. Desperate to save the family business, Chow made the long drive to Houston to consult with this mystical savior. The advisor, a powerful and direct woman named Daphne Wright, welcomed them with open arms and grand promises, performing intricate ceremonies designed to turn their luck around. For a time, the family held on to a bright, fragile hope. But instead of prosperity, they prayed for a silent, dark storm was gathering on the horizon. On the quiet morning of June 10th, 2012, at exactly 7:29 in the morning, the peace of the neighborhood was shattered by a frantic call to the emergency services. Chow Tran, his voice trembling with an overwhelming anxiety, requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. He explained to the dispatcher that his 70-something father-in-law and his mother-in-law had not been answering their door. Chow, accompanied by his teenage son and his wife, had gathered outside the apartment complex, paralyzed by a terrible feeling that something was deeply wrong. They had noticed that a window of the residence was standing open, and the silence from within was deafening. When the responding officers arrived, they found the family huddled together on the pavement, visibly shaken. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience, led the way into the apartment. The initial signs pointed to a chaotic burglary. The living room was in complete disarray, with compact discs scattered across the floor and furniture turned askew. Officer Weller called out, but only the hollow echo of his own voice answered. He checked the kitchen and the bathroom, finding them empty, before moving toward the bedroom. Initially, the bedroom appeared vacant, and Weller turned to leave, hoping the sweet elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning stroll. But as he turned, his flashlight beam caught a series of hand smudges on the wall adjacent to a small closet. A heavy, instinctual hesitation gripped him. When he gently opened the closet door, his heart sank. Long and Hong were inside, bound tightly with duct tape. It was an incredibly brutal and heartbreaking scene, one that left even a veteran officer standing in silent shock. Weller stepped out into the living room, momentarily unable to speak, before regaining his composure to request backup and the homicide unit on his radio. Within hours, the apartment was filled with investigators, including Detective Stewart, a seasoned investigator with 21 years in the homicide division. The scene was incredibly violent, with evidence of a struggle near the front door. Yet, as the detectives began their meticulous sweep, several details seemed strangely out of place. On the coffee table lay a plate of crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette. Wrapped around a glass bottle was a light blue bandana, a potential symbol of active local street gangs known for extortion. Despite these glaring clues, Detective Stewart remained highly skeptical. In his decades of service, he knew that sometimes a crime scene could appear too perfect, as if it had been deliberately staged to lead investigators down a false path. Most street gangs did not commit crimes of this specific, highly personalized nature against elderly citizens. The following day, the autopsies revealed a devastating truth. The couple had suffered blunt force trauma, but the actual cause of death was suffocation due to the extensive layers of duct tape wrapped around their faces. The sheer malice of the act convinced the detectives that this was not a simple robbery gone wrong. This was a targeted, deeply personal attack meant to silence the couple forever. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Detective Stewart received an unexpected inquiry from an insurance company. It was revealed that the deceased couple held substantial life insurance policies totaling at least $850,000, with the primary beneficiary being none other than their son-in-law, Chow Tran. When questioned on June 13, 2012, Chow cooperated fully. He explained that the policies were put in place to ensure the survival of the commercial sewing business in the event of a tragedy. He and his family provided airtight alibis, showing they had been celebrating Long's birthday at a lively family gathering until late the previous evening. Deoxyribonucleic acid samples and fingerprints were collected from all family members, but they did not match the genetic material recovered from the marijuana cigarette left at the scene because the genetic profile was not found in the National Criminal Database. Investigators suspected the culprit might have been a minor with no prior felony record. With no further leads, the case slowly went cold, sleeping in the archives for 3 long years. Then, in the autumn of 2015, a bizarre twist of fate breathed new life into the investigation. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for felony offense of stealing a horse because he was now an adult with a felony conviction. His genetic profile was entered into the national database. The system immediately flared with a match. His deoxyribonucleic acid perfectly matched the biological material found on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene from 2012. On October 17, 2015, investigators brought the 19-year-old Willie in for questioning. When presented with the undeniable scientific evidence placing him in the apartment, the young man broke down in tears and confessed. He revealed that when he was only 16, his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a job in Arlington. They had driven 3 hours from Houston, armed with a key to the apartment, which allowed them to enter without forcing the lock. Willie explained that the entire crime scene had been deliberately staged with a blue bandana, pills, and a marijuana cigarette to mimic a gang-related robbery. He confessed to holding Hong while his 49-year-old Uncle Bobby subdued and beat Long with a blunt object before they both bound the helpless couple and left them in the closet. When asked why they would commit such an unspeakable act, Willie dropped a bombshell. It was a murder-for-hire plot orchestrated by none other than Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Willie claimed his Uncle Bobby had met Daphne through her office, where she complained bitterly about clients who owed her massive sums of money. She had allegedly given Bobby the key and promised him a payment of $10,000 to eliminate the couple. With this shocking revelation, detectives arrested Bobby Guillory on December 16, 2015 in Katy, Texas. Facing capital murder charges, Bobby also confessed, painting Daphne as a ruthless spiritual loan shark. He explained that Chow Tran and Hong Lu had run up an astronomical debt of nearly $280,000 in their desperate bid to lift the curse on their business. When they could not pay, Daphne discovered the existence of the massive life insurance policies and devised a plan to collect her money through their deaths. Most shocking of all, Bobby claimed that Daphne had obtained the apartment key directly from Chow Tran. Detectives immediately moved to arrest Daphne right at her Houston home on August 31st, 2016, inside her residence. They discovered detailed financial ledgers revealing she had charged various clients tens of thousands of dollars for mystical services, confirming her highly lucrative and coercive business model. In a bid to secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors made a difficult decision, offering Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his full, truthful testimony. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as a terrifying, manipulative figure who claimed to control his mind and body. He claimed his mother-in-law had desperately suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to satisfy the spiritual debt, an idea that Daphne eagerly expanded to include both elderly victims. Although the defense argued passionately that Chow was a complicit actor who walked away with the bulk of the insurance fortune, the jury ultimately found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder. In September of 2019, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, joining Bobby and Willie Guillory behind bars. Though the lack of criminal charges for Chow Tran left a lingering bittersweet note for the dedicated detectives, the community found solace in the fact that the truth had finally been dragged into the light. The memory of Long and Hong, two gentle souls who wanted nothing more than a peaceful life for their children, was honored by the tireless pursuit of justice, proving that even the darkest secrets eventually fade under bright, warm light of truth. The sun always rises with quiet sort of promise over Arlington, Texas, casting a golden, warm glow across the sprawling neighborhoods where families from all corners of the globe have come to build their lives. In this vast community, tucked away in Tarrant County, the streets are filled with the rich aromas of simmering broths, the cheerful chatter of children walking to school, and the steady hum of local businesses striving for success. It was a place where the American dream was not just a concept, but a living, breathing reality painted in a beautiful mosaic of cultures. For many years, the Vietnamese community had flourished here, planting deep roots that stretched back to the late 1970s. They brought with them a profound respect for their heritage, a dedication to hard work, and a belief that with family by your side, any obstacle could be overcome. Among these families were Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, a devoted elderly couple who had journeyed to the United States in the year 2000. They were gentle souls, beloved by everyone who knew them, always ready with a kind word or a helping hand. To their neighbors, they represented the very best of the community. They had established a commercial sewing business, working tirelessly alongside their children and their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to create a legacy of prosperity and love. But as the seasons changed, the unpredictable tides of commerce brought unexpected challenges, and the family found themselves searching for a way to restore their fading fortunes. This search would lead them down a winding path of ancient traditions, spiritual searches, and an intricate mystery that would eventually call upon the utmost dedication of the local police. Forced to solve. The story began to unfold in earnest on a bright summer morning, specifically on June 10th in the year 2012. At 7:29 in the morning, the peaceful silence of the early hour was broken by a phone call to the emergency dispatch center. Chow Tran, a 38-year-old immigrant who served as the primary English-speaking representative for his family, spoke with a voice trembling with concern. He requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, explaining that his teenage son had gone to knock on their door but had received no answer. The family had gathered outside the apartment building, their anxiety growing by the minute. They noticed that a window to the residence was slightly open, and an unsettling feeling hung in the air. When the responding officers arrived at the scene, they immediately sensed that this was not a routine call. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience, observed the family standing together in the morning light, their faces etched with worry. Upon entering the apartment, the officers noted that the living space was in a state of disarray, suggesting that someone had searched through the home. Officer Weller called out, but only silence answered, moving through the rooms. His focus was entirely on finding the elderly couple and ensuring their safety. In the bedroom, just as he was about to turn back, he noticed subtle smudges on the wall next to a small closet door. Following a professional instinct, he gently opened the door and made a heartbreaking discovery. Long and Hong were inside, motionless and silent. The scene was deeply unsettling, a stark contrast to the peaceful lives the couple had led. Officer Weller immediately contacted his supervisor and requested the assistance of the homicide unit. Detective Stewart, a seasoned investigator with 21 years of experience in the homicide division, arrived shortly thereafter. He was joined by a team of dedicated professionals who looked at the scene not just as a puzzle to be solved, but as a sacred duty to bring justice to a family in mourning. The apartment showed signs of a simulated disturbance, including scattered items and even a light blue bandana wrapped around a beverage bottle, which initially suggested the possibility of local gang activity. However, Detective Stewart and his team remained analytical, noting that some details appeared almost too deliberately placed, as if designed to lead investigators down a specific path. As the investigation commenced, the detectives focused on understanding the lives of Long and Hong. They learned that the couple had immigrated to Texas with their 3 children, driven by the desire to build a stable future. Their commercial sewing business had initially thrived, even securing prestigious contracts to manufacture garments for major entertainment brands. But when those contracts eventually concluded, the family faced financial strain. In alignment with traditional beliefs, they sought the guidance of a spiritual advisor to help lift what they perceived as a